Good afternoon and welcome to session 2 of our waste webinar. My name is Kala and I'm co-founder of Climate Governance Malaysia and also director at CGM. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Climate Governance Malaysia or CGM is a World Economic Forum initiative, and our mandate is to get businesses to address climate risks so as to be climate resilient. We are hosting this webinar with the CEO Action Network, or CAN for short, and CAN is a coalition of leaders with a purpose to shape policies, win stakeholders, and create a favorable ecosystem for sustainable businesses and sustainable development in Malaysia. We have currently 56 companies who have joined CAN. And last year, CGM and CAN ran a number of roundtables, and the recommendations from these discussions were launched on Earth Day after engagements with the relevant government ministries. Last year, we didn't address the waste sector, but this is an important area, and we are running this in a 3-part series. At our first session on the 30th of June, and I think some of you joined us, we heard how corporations and consumers are managing their waste. Today, we will talk about solutions and the idea of having smart cities and how these can help resolve waste issues within the community. Our final session will be a conversation with the government, how we can all work together to what is coined as the all of government and whole of society approach. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we have lined up a distinguished panel of speakers who will share their experiences. We have with us today, and we're very grateful to have Shamsul Bahar, the CEO of MGTC, the Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. Ms. Seok, the Executive Director of United Cities, Mr. B.K. Sinha, Founding Director of Habitat and Vero, and Ms. Christine Rodwell, who is joining us from Paris, and she is the founder and director of Impulsum. I'm sure you're all waiting anxiously to hear from them, but please allow me to play a 3-minute video which outlines some innovative initiatives that are being implemented in cities around the world. Rosna, can you please play the video?
Innovative projects making cities more sustainable. With an ever-increasing global population and rising urbanization, creating safe, resilient, and sustainable cities is right at the top of the green agenda. The United Nations included this mission among its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which together form a blueprint for collectively addressing the challenges the world faces. Here are some of the innovative ways cities are rising to the challenge. 1. Sponge cities. Scientists think global warming is increasing the likelihood of extreme weather events, including floods. But some cities are fighting back, using the power of nature to mitigate the risks. In China, concrete neighborhoods are being interlaced with green spaces that can naturally detain and filter water. The same concept is employed in Singapore, which has been dubbed the Garden City, due to its abundance of greenery. 2. Vertical forests. Short on space, people in cities have often looked upwards for places to expand. In Milan, Italy, architects have done the same with tree cover, creating a vertical forest on 2 residential tower blocks. Boasting 800 trees, 4,500 shrubs and 15,000 plants, the forest would cover an area the size of 3.5 football pitches if planted on the ground. Similar projects are underway in cities in Switzerland, the Netherlands, and China. 3. The 20-minute neighborhood. Imagine if everything you needed for a happy, healthy life could be found within a 20-minute public transport trip, bike ride, or walk from home. Some cities are working to make this a reality, with Melbourne leading the way. It wants residents to always be within easy reach of things like shops, business services, education, or leisure facilities. 4. And anything they can do. In Paris, The mayor is using the Rue de Rivoli as a prototype for a future metropolis in which no Parisian should need to travel more than 15 minutes on foot or by bike to work, shop, or deal with a government agency. 5. Miniature urban forests. Miniature forests are springing up on patches of land in urban areas around the world using a method inspired by Japanese temples. A botanist found that protected areas around the temples, shrines and cemeteries contained a huge variety of native vegetation that coexisted to produce resilient and diverse ecosystems. The tiny forests are viewed as having potential to help combat climate change. 6. The green train track. Regeneration projects are also at the forefront of sustainable city initiatives, and they are certainly on the right track in Bangkok, where the shortage of green spaces has come under scrutiny. Now an old elevated railway line has been turned into a city park. It may not be large, but it has outsized importance as a catalyst for urban regeneration, and can change the way people look at public spaces, said one of the project's consultants. 7. Smarter commuting. In Israel, a new app could hold the key to creating faster, cleaner, and more convenient commutes. Users enter their location and destination, and an algorithm calculates the most efficient journey. Public transport is then rerouted accordingly. The system was introduced to help fight COVID-19, but if implemented permanently, it's thought it could save $25 million a year.
Thank you, Rosna. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll agree with me that this may be the future for smart cities. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished moderator, Dr. Renard Siew. Dr. Renard is a sustainability and climate change specialist. He was a Yayasan Saim Darby scholar and obtained his PhD from Cambridge University. He has many awards to his credit, and for his work on sustainability, he was named one of Asia's 21 young leaders by Asia Society and top 10 most inspiring green warriors. Wow, Renard, we are truly honored to have you with us today. And so please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Renard Siew. Renard, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kala, for that very, very kind introduction. Hello and welcome everyone to the second Waste Roundtable, focusing on smart cities and technological solutions. It's amazing to see the number of participants that have joined us over lunchtime. Just to set a bit of context, we know that with fast-growing cities and ballooning population, developing countries, right, like Malaysia, are continuously facing numerous challenges and wanting to manage waste in a sustainable manner. Just to set a bit of context as well, we know that waste generated in Malaysia in 2005 alone came up to about 19,000 tons per day, with only a recycling rate of 5%. 13 years later, in 2018, the quantity rose to 38,000 tons per day, with only a marginal increase in our recycling rate at 17%. This is definitely alarming, considering the fact that we are running out of space for landfills, and there's also a rising cost rate of waste disposal. So we must rethink our approach to convert this crisis into an opportunity. And to help us unpack some of the smart cities and technological solutions to address our waste issues today, we have put together an esteemed group of panelists, which I will introduce them in a while. But we will start off, right, with none other than Mr. BK Sinha, a rep from the Malaysian Green Building Council. He has got more than 30 years of experience in project management, in waste to energy type solutions, and also a very, very passionate advocate, zero waste advocate, I would say, focusing a lot on circularity. It gives me great pleasure to have you here with us, Mr. BK. And without further ado, I'll pass the time over to you.
Thank you very much, Renard, for that gracious introduction. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you very much for all the rest of the panelists joining me here, adding strength to our journey through sustainability. And a special thank you to all the audience out there. So let me try and share my screen. Share my screen. Okay, here goes. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me see how I can do this better. All right, never mind. We'll run with this. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are at. This is what is happening today in the world. This is what we are throwing away. The largest amount of waste comes from households. And this is causing us the biggest problem. Yes, we do have waste from different streams, industry, what you call it, nuclear waste or construction waste, but those are all a pale shade compared to municipal solid waste. So I'd like to draw focus on this one. And so this is what is happening globally. Please take note of 44% being food and green waste, that's organic. And it does decompose and it causes a whole lot of problems throughout the waste management system. And if you look at Malaysia, a study done a little bit back in 2018 says that we've got food waste and its mixtures, I've highlighted it in a red box, of 74%. Now, I'd like to look at this fraction of waste as a resource, and it is energy for me. It is also fertilizer for me. But what do we do with it? This is what we do with it. We have been continuously, since time immemorial, extracting from nature, making what we want, then using it, and then throwing it. It's the take, make, use, throw process that we follow largely throughout the globe. Now, this has got a limited lifespan. It is not sustainable, and it will have a peak, and then we will start facing disasters, and we are already starting to face them more or less in different forms and fashion throughout the world. Now, this is a slightly holistic and philosophical look at why we need to change what we are doing now. On the left, you will see a picture or a diagram of an atom. You will note that in the center is a circle, and around it are circles going round. So it tells us that nature behaves in this way from the most minutest of molecules in substances, whereas the picture on your right is one of the universe, and you see the sun in the center of it, a circle. You see the planets around it, all circles. The planets are all going round the sun in circles. In fact, if we stop to think, everything in nature is in circles. After day, there can only be night. And then it comes back to day, and that's a circle. At birth, only death is guaranteed, and that's a circle. So how did we, 7.5 billion of us, generally come to the conclusion that we can continue and get away with this? Now, this misalignment is what has caused us, is one of the contributors of our climate crisis today. And definitely we have to take this straight line and convert it into a circle. Today, we might call it circular economy. And I will not go through this slide because it may be familiar to many of you, but the gist of it is that if at design stage of a product or a service, we are already aware of how we are going to reuse it at end of life, that's the simple step we need to take. Recognizing that when the use of this material or product has come to an end, it must be put into another stream to either come back to life as the same product or a different product. That is imperative. Now, one of the cornerstones, and in my opinion, my humble opinion, the most important cornerstones is to separate your waste at source. Is this complicated? No, we just look at organic, which in the household is pre and post kitchen waste, and the dry waste from the rest of the house. That's all we have to do. We have to separate it into two. Now, when we do that, the organic waste can become compost or biogas. At biogas, it can produce energy. At compost, it can produce fertilizer. In biogas, in fact, it can do both. The non-organics, of course, go to recycler. There will be some odd fractions like adult and children's pampers and sanitary napkins. We will explore future technologies, but that is a very small fraction of what goes to landfill. This is what it looks like to have a large scale and a small scale biogas machine. The technology is more than 100 years. Whereas companies like ECO do buy dry waste, which they can send into recycling streams. With that, I shall leave you with these thoughts of how simplistically we can change one of our behaviors to cause a seismic knock-on-knock effect over the entire waste stream to make it more sustainable. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attention. Today, I represent the Malaysia Green Building Council, which is an established member of the World Green Building Council, operating in more than 70 countries in the world, with the vision to convert the building and construction industry from business as usual to sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PK. I think you've given us a lot of food for thought, right? Especially with this seismic knock-on effect that you've described so and articulated so clearly. I'm sure there's a lot more for us to unpack, right, during our Q&A session later. But next up, I wanted to introduce our second speaker for today. It's none other than Ms. Goh Seok May. She is the Executive Director of United Cities, which has the mission of creating and developing sustainable cities aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs in short. Without further ado, May, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Renard, for that. Let me just share my screen. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. A little bit about United Cities and who we are. We are an international non-profit organization. We are headquartered in Vienna, and our intention is basically to align cities and communities towards SDG goals and net zero goals. And we are hoping to do that by 2030 or at the latest at 2050. So United Cities, how do we do this? We do this via technologies and via our own funding. So we have a United Cities fund that we will help leaders align towards these goals. We have the backing of 16 UN organizations for the United for Smart Sustainable Cities program. And this program focuses on cities. So why cities? Most of us live in cities. In Malaysia, 72.5% of us live in cities. And that number seems to be increasing as population increase. According to the latest UN SCAP report 2022, these are the indicators. If you see on the right-hand side of the screen, the SDG goals indicators from non-poverty, zero hunger, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 17. If you look at this diagram, the box in red, the box in red are the ones where we need to look out for. So SDG 11, cities and communities, we are not getting there. Basically, very little effort has been made. But moving down from there to responsible usage and consumption, to climate action, it is regressing. So basically, from a reporting standpoint for the whole of Southeast Asia, we are actually regressing when it comes to climate change and responsible consumption. So what do we do about this? I will show you two short videos that uses digital twin as a base technological platform for us to be able to analyze, to put data, and to see how we are doing. So we cannot measure something and we cannot manage something that we cannot measure. So the first step for any cities and communities moving forward is to look at what it is that they have today, where are they today in terms of SDG goals and net zero, and basically how to then achieve that. So the two short cities, if you wanna, let me share the screen. So this is the first, there will be no voice. This is the U4SSC basically goals and KPIs globally. So it's a global benchmark for a city dashboard. And we use this technology basically to look at where in terms of a traffic light, red, green, yellow, on where the cities are. So if we look at the whole country, like for example, in Norway, you can then look at all the different KPIs and a benchmark for each of these cities. And what is it that we can do to basically ensure that we have technologies that can support them when they move towards the UN SDG goals. So different cities have got different KPIs, and different cities have got different KPIs, and these KPIs then can then be aggregated onto a national level. So the second video, a very short video again, is about some of the use cases that is done here. So water is done. So this is talking about Norway. Water is done. They look at building energy. I mean, what BK mentioned earlier about green buildings. Building energy is one of the main ones. They look at mobility. I will share with you a case study on how mobility can be used in the waste sector. And lastly is how to then have better public service when it comes to this. So these are some of the technologies that, that we can use from a digital twin to encourage cities and communities to move towards SDG goals. So one of the two case studies, the first one is how this is used in the city of Barcelona. So BK mentioned about waste segregation at source. When we were in Barcelona, we had to segregate our waste into 5 different types, not just 2. I mean, the baby steps is to start with 2, but in Barcelona, they actually segregated into 5, which is paper, glass, cans, diapers, sanitary towels, and the last one is actually organic waste with 5 different colors. So we have to remember the colors and where, how, and we segregate the waste. But how the digitization is used here is each of this bin that you see has got a sensor attached to it. So we call it Internet of Things, and where we collect the sensor from each of these waste bin collectively onto a city level so that we know which of these bins are being full at which time. It's the first technology. The second technology is then using the digital twin and the mobility, the urban mobility, for the trucks to go and collect the waste that is full. So the trucks do not go every Monday or every Tuesday, but they go into a certain routing when the sensor tells them that that is full. So these are the 2 technologies that they are basically using in Barcelona for waste and waste collection. Another one that we are doing closer to home is in Singapore. In Singapore, this is looking at cold chain logistics for their fresh produce. So cold chain logistics is looking at the cold rooms, basically from supplier to the movement of it to the distribution center, the movement of it again, then to the supermarkets. So the whole chain of it, the fresh produce actually gets rotten basically along the way because of this. So what we did with NUS is to look at using Internet of Things, the sensors, to put a network of sensors in a warehouse to capture the temperature and the humidity on this. And from this, we do a data analytics and machine learning to automatically adjust the temperature as we go along. So most of the time right now, the temperature is basically the same throughout the cold room. So if it's like 16, it's 16 across the cold room. But we found that the ones that is nearer to the door where it gets open most of the time, the temperature there is warmer, and that's why the food there gets wasted a lot more. So this has got 2 technologies. One is using the IoT and sensor, and the other one is using a bot, basically an Autobot or a robot, basically to look at which of these sensors are not accurate or going down, or and then readjust it automatically. So there are 2 technologies that are used here as well. So that being said, that's the end of my slide. My 5 minutes is up. Thank you. Back to you, Renard.
Well, thank you very much, May, for the very enlightening case studies, especially on how City of Barcelona actually, like conduct their waste segregation by attaching sensors to bins. And the other one that I particularly like is the NUS case study. In fact, in our first roundtable session, we had Suzanne Mooney from the Lost Food Project. Perhaps there's an opportunity to connect both of you to see if there's an opportunity to collaborate. I just wanted to remind everyone that there is an opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. So do pop them into the Q&A box and we'll try and get through them as much as we can, in the later half of this session. Now, I wanted to introduce our third speaker, Ms. Christine Rodwell, who's the founder and president of Impulsum. Christine has also personally been involved, I was told, with the cleanup of New Orleans project, and perhaps we could and might be able to hear a little bit more about that from her. Christine, over to you.
Thank you, Renard. Hi, everybody. Very happy to be with you this morning for me. First of all, maybe a quick introduction on Veolia Group. As you may know, Veolia has been dealing with cities for over 160 years. And also with industrial clients. Half of the activity is with cities, half of the activity is with industrial clients. And when I joined Veolia, we were discussing waste management. When I left 8 years later, and I totally agree with BK on that point, we were not discussing waste management anymore. We were discussing circular economy in order to adapt to our cities and industrial clients' needs. We developed new programs around recycling and valorization of waste. And as BK and May explained, the whole waste issue today, I don't think we face any technical issue anymore, even considering and looking at hazardous waste, which is one of the most profitable activity of Veolia Group. We consider that the issue is not anymore around technology, is much more around, as Dr. Kala said, having the right ecosystem, having the right stakeholders around the table. And this is where I would like to illustrate with a concrete example. So as Dr. Renard said, within Veolia, I designed a resilient city strategy. The idea was that, and as May explained, more and more cities are trying to become smarter. And they are trying to become smarter because they want to be more inclusive. They want to be more resilient. And at that time, that was around 6 years ago, the Rockefeller Foundation had launched a very interesting initiative called 100 Resilient Cities. So you had 100 cities around the world, including Singapore that you mentioned, May, who were, engaging on this path of becoming more resilient. And this is where I came in. And I thought, as private sector, how can I help? And so what I did concretely is I designed the right ecosystem. I decided to sign a partnership between Veolia, between 100 Resilient Cities Foundation, and Swiss Re. Swiss Re is another private company, a big reinsurance company. And what we did, and I will show you now a quick film that will illustrate this better than slides. We decided that we would start from the city's needs, because the problem is most of the time, cities are saying, okay, private sector is wanting to help. They come with amazing innovative solutions, but they just forget to start from what we need. So we designed a new approach, starting with a risk and opportunities analysis of the city, looking at social and environmental issues that the city is facing, allowing them to design an action plan, and then as a third step for private sector to step in and try together as a coalition to develop innovative solutions for the city. And please, can you share the quick film? I think it will be a good illustration of this solution, concrete field solution. And then I will be ready, of course, to answer questions.
Yeah, Rosna, can we play the video, please?
Katrina was a real disruption to the city of New Orleans, not just the people of the city, the businesses of the city, but more tellingly, the infrastructure. A huge failure of the federal levee system in the city.
Well, consequences for the city were dramatic in the sense that because of the levee breaches, the city was overwhelmed and 85% of it was underwater.
During Katrina, we lost 1,800 of our brothers and sisters, and it really woke everybody up to the need to be better prepared for bad things that are going to happen. And so we have set about completely reorganizing the way we build in the city, the way we react, the way we build social cohesion, because it's not just infrastructure, but it's the strength of the people as well. Well, resilience does a couple things for you. Number one, if you can begin to live with a resilient mindset, it means that you spend the time preparing better because you know difficult things are going to happen. And then secondly, you spend a lot of time building correctly the right way, not only infrastructure, but social capital, so that you can actually restore your house, restore your business, restore the community that was broken. And what has happened is companies like Swiss Re and companies like Veolia have begun to partner with the government, creating public-private partnerships to help other cities really understand how to make this happen.
The problems of urban resilience are large. They're what we call wicked problems. And those are the kind of problems that can't be solved by any one sector. Those are things that don't get solved in 1 day or 2 days. Those are challenges that need to be worked on by a generation of planners and thinkers and doers. And at the same time, all of us need quick wins. We need to show and demonstrate some progress right now.
The resilience issue is a systemic issue. And for the very first time in the world, Swiss Re and Veolia are bridging between different skills to provide to NOLA a unique solution. One thing that's unique in what's being developed with Veolia and Swiss Re right now is that this is a very detailed resilience plan, looking at each infrastructure in details and understanding how to make it more robust, but also bringing the tools that will enable the city to follow up that actions are actually taken, that solutions are actually implemented, so that the risk is reduced.
As all of our partners from around the world said, oh, by the way, that wasn't just New Orleans, that's happening all over the world. It's happening in all the CARICOM countries. And in the United States of America, it's affecting 80% of the people that happen to live on.
One primary one that Veolia worked with us early on is creating a berm around our wastewater treatment plant so it wouldn't be overwhelmed. So it's now a 17-foot berm. We're now looking at various strategies that would look at how our power system become more resilient, how our water system can be protected during the course of this so we can continue to survive during these events.
The outcome of the partnership between Veolia and Swiss Re can be threefold. Firstly, a more resilient water infrastructure, which will reduce economic damage in future natural disaster events. Secondly, an optimized financial protection for the city, which is designed to kick in at the pivot point at which transferring risk to the insurance markets becomes financially more attractive than building additional physical protection. And thirdly, a faster recovery for the city as rapid insurance payouts to utilities such as Veolia enabled them to optimize their disaster response and bring up the services up and running again more swiftly.
Resilience is a multi-pronged effort for a city. social resilience, economic resilience, infrastructure resilience, all of those pieces fit together to make a strong city. And so the ability for us to be able to manage that future is really going to be the test of our resilience.
And then there are things that you can't control, and that bad things will happen, but you can prepare yourself for them when they do happen, and you can make yourself strong enough to respond. And so what's so exciting about the partnership that the City of New Orleans and the Surge and Water Board have with Swiss Re and Veolia is that you have the private sector and the public sector bringing their intelligence, bringing their capability, bringing their resources so that people can be happy and healthy and respond when difficult things occur in their life.
Thank you. So this was the first public-private partnership on resilient cities. We then developed the model in more than 20 cities. And of course, in most of the 20 cities, one of the key issues we had to face was around waste management and circular economy. For example, in Melbourne, that May you mentioned, the main issue was around sludge and how would we use sludge as an organic resource. So happy to go in more detail afterwards. The key success factor of the initiative were to have the right ecosystem and to be able to align the city's needs and the private sector wanting to engage with the city, starting from the city risk and opportunities analysis. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Christine. And I think that was really a perfect example of public and private sector partnership, totally in line with Climate Governance Initiative Malaysia's tagline of whole of government, whole of society approach, which we really have to focus on a little bit more. I'm sure if there are a lot of questions from our audience, please feel free to pop those questions into the Q&A chat box. And last but not least, allow me to introduce our panelists for today, none other than Encik Shamsul Bahar, the CEO of Malaysian Green Technology Centre, or MGTC, an agency of CASA, the Ministry of Environment and Water, with the objective of really trying to drive, climate change mitigation and to promote people to adopt green lifestyles. Over to you, Encik Shamsul.
Thank you, Dr. Renard, fellow panelists and audience. What you just saw in the video shared by Christine is actually climate change. And we have to understand that what climate change does, it has a huge impact on the whole or the global situation. Now, just want to share my slide. You can see my slides, right? So climate change is real. And we are living in the Anthropocene age, Anthropocene epoch, where the human beings are the one that drive the action, what needs to be done, the development, all driven by the human beings. And we are the one who could also undo what is out there. We can actually try to mitigate climate change. And this is very possible. Now, this slide is quite common. This is a general information on what are the types of waste that we generated in Malaysia. Municipal waste, you have sewage, you have mining, construction, and the list goes on and on. But I would like to share that the amount of biodegradable waste, which are organics, are huge, especially in Malaysia. And if you look at the percentage, it is more than 51%. In 2020, the amount of tonnage that been churned out daily from municipal waste is close to 50,000 tons, and half of them are waste. And what do you do with those waste? Obviously, you send them to landfill to be buried. And what happened to those organics? They will become gases. And part of the reason why climate change happened is because of the greenhouse gases that have been emitted out. Now, there are three components of greenhouse gases. They are carbon dioxide coming from energy and also transportation, nitrous oxide from agriculture, and also methane. Methane is the culprit of all, because whatever that we consume, human beings, will go to waste, and those waste will turn into gases, and it is polluting. And if you look at this table, landfill contributed most, as opposed to other waste that are being thrown, being disposed. So in Malaysia, what we have done is that we have the Department of National Solid Waste under KPKT that overlooks and come up with certain policies and all. And there are 7 states that are involved in the ACTA 672, which are being controlled by the federal government. But there are other states which are not. So this is where the situation occurs. We have difficulty in getting all of these states to understand and to have a single objective of churning out waste into added value products, because this is most important. The challenges that we are facing is actually on public awareness. As you saw in Christine's slide, they have the public and private partnership. The public must understand, and the public is not only the government. The public is us, the consumers, the one that are churning out waste almost every day. So we have to understand that the more waste that we produce, the more gases that will actually incur, the more problem with the climate that will happen, and how to mitigate them. We are the one that have to actually drive and find solution and find ways how to change ourselves, change our mindset. We have the waste treatment plant, even though they are existed almost everywhere around the globe, but they are expensive. So it goes back to the early on, where the public have to actually ensure that there are less waste that are being thrown, less waste that are disposed. And so what I'd like to share here is how Malaysia can be a zero waste nation. So if you look at the zero waste hierarchy, top of the this is the upside down the pyramid. Top of the list is refuse. So what we need to do is to find ways how to reduce and refuse some of the waste that we are using. I take, for example, recently we had this campaign on the zero straw, and it does work, because those straws, if we do without, if we have another substitute, perhaps a paper straw, and paper straw are degradable, and paper straw are not would not create a certain hazardous to the wildlife. So if we can do that, then we can actually tackle the situation of waste. So in all, the drive actually coming up from the public. And we have, number 2, you have to reduce whatever that we use. Now, reduce is quite easy, you know. In Malaysia, if you look at during the pandemic, we have our MCO. There's a lot of food that have been sold and delivered online, but sometimes those food becomes waste. Sometimes those packaging becomes waste. So if we could try to limit ourselves, whatever that we could consume is just that, and whatever that we produce, it could be sent over to say food that we ordered. If we cannot finish them, say we give them to our neighbors, for example, so that it can be shared. So the number of organic products would not be as much as what we witness. Now, we also have to find ways how to reuse back. Now, reuse bag is quite easy. If you go to the grocery store, you bring your recycle bag, you bring your bags that you could actually put your food inside. If you were to go to purchase food from any restaurant, bring your own containers. So in a way that we do not actually throw things. And recycle is all about circular economy. So number 4 is huge in the agenda that I would like to discuss in my next slide. Circular economy is very important, but circular economy will happen if those waste are not being taken care of. if those waste that we produce do not actually being reduced by us. So this is all about circular economy. Circular economy is to add value to what you have. For example, you might have your organics, and what do you do with them? You have a composter at home, or you have composter at the community. You can turn them into compost. You can even collect all those plastic bottles and recycling them. There are some companies that I would love to share later on that would take those plastic bottles and turn them into yarn and making fabrics out of them. So these are the ways that what we can do. Instead of throwing, we keep them, we collect them, and there are parties that would be requiring them. Remember in those days, I think it's even now as well, you have trucks or lorries that comes to your residential and collect all those surat khabar lama or newspaper, old newspaper. So this is how we could actually contribute. We keep the waste that we find that, hey, instead of throwing away, we keep, and we have these parties that do the collection and we pass it to them. Now, recovery is how to ensure that whatever waste are being segregated, waste are being material are being recovered, and they are to be sold to entities. As I mentioned earlier on, we have this plastic bottle that we turn into yarn, into fabrics. There are companies that collect waste. Example, used cooking oil. And if you really understand, maybe read the news about a month ago, the maiden flight made by Malaysian Airlines system to Singapore, what they have is they convert used cooking oil into jet fuel. And I think one of our panelists are directly involved. I think the sun is involved in filtering them and converting them into added value and sold to a company that produces jet oil. So these are the things that what we can do. Instead of just throwing, we keep, and there'll be collection companies that comes and collect. I understand that it is not nationwide. We are starting bit by bit in certain cities, but we would be introducing to more. But again, it cannot be done so without the participation for the public. We have waste segregation, as earlier on mentioned. It's quite easy, as what BK says, but who would be doing it? We might be doing it, say, for a couple of weeks, and then we tend to forget, and we tend to go back to the same sort of habits of just throwing everything in the trash can, in the garbage can. So we need to understand that waste needs to be segregated. Waste needs to be collected at a certain interval, a certain days, and those waste can be turned back into added value, which would create economy to the certain community or places. Now, next is the residual waste. Residual waste are waste to energy. Even though we are encouraging waste to energy, but if we could just use renewable energy, then we are good at it. But if we were to produce a lot of waste, that waste can be turned to shadow waste can be turned into RDF, then those waste will be converted into a substitute for coal, for example. So those are the things that we need to actually ensure that if we do proper segregation, we do proper at source. The word is to ensure that whatever that we produce, that we throw out, we separate them, and to be sent to different days of collection by the concessionaire. Then we would be curbing this situation. Another one is repurpose. Unacceptable is shadow waste. We do not want them. We have to find ways how to turn them into other products. But if we can do without, then will be great. On my next table, if you look at on the circular lines, those are the circular economy. Those are the ones that what we need to do, because nothing goes to waste. I will give you an example later on what we're trying to do in one island on how to ensure that there'll be zero waste at all. So this is the whole 7R of waste management. We need to recycle the waste. We need to reuse those waste. We need to reduce those waste, repurpose for other means, other usage. We need to refuse some of them as a straw that I mentioned. We need to repair or remanufacture all furnitures that are being thrown by hotels. They are not being thrown. They are being remanufactured and to be used again. In the Scandinavian countries, most of the assets, they do not actually purchase them. They lease or they rent those assets. Example, your automobile, lease automobile, and when it is close to the end of life, they will be converted and reconditioned to be used by another sets of people, another sets of countries. And most important thing is that we need to rethink whatever that we consume, whatever that we use, we need to rethink them again, or else the situation will be as what we are looking now. In 2020, we're looking at 50,000 tons of waste being churning out by the municipal waste. And if you look back at the numbers, if we say by 2050, the number will be so huge that you wouldn't have time or have the space at all within Malaysia alone that you could actually visit, because most of those land will be converted into landfill now. So this is what circular economy is all about. We have to look at our own self, because we are the culprit. We are the one who's creating it. Even though there are more and more companies that are looking into finding ways how to do waste management, but we have to drive it ourselves. And the only way that we can mitigate climate change is to have this real understanding of how to convert those waste into added value. Now, DK showed the linear economy. Yes, linear economy is just a one-sided. It is the cradle to grave. But what you're looking at is the cradle to cradle on how to evolve them into products that we can reuse them many times. And we are able to do so, then we would be able to be successful in creating zero waste that goes to the landfill. Now, the way forward is to have to have this understanding of citywide universal collection and safe disposal of products. We need to reduce focus on reducing and treating food waste. Why? How? Whatever we consume, we need to understand that there cannot be any waste. What you have, if you cannot finish them, let's share with the neighbors, with whatever entities or NGO that actually are looking for food. Now, we have to reduce incinerator, because even though incinerator are considered as green, if you lose solid waste are not coming from fossil fuel. But then again, if we could use less of those waste, then we could actually have lesser usage of incinerator. And we need to increase our rate of recycling. That is most important. So all in all, what the government have done, we have done quite a lot of numbers of projects and programs, but we need the public to be with us. Our idea of zero waste is very much to do with producing them and bury them at landfill. But just imagine, if we could reduce those waste, none goes to the landfill, and whatever amount is just required to turn them into added value products will be done so. So I hope that the understanding, I think the understanding is already there, but is the action plan. We need to walk the talk. We talk a lot about reducing waste, but then we are not actually working towards reducing waste. So thank you very much. That's my 5 minutes of presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shamsul, for that wonderful presentation. Provided us with, once again, a lot of food for thought. I have a lot of questions that are coming into our chat box even as we speak, and I think we should just jump straight into it. I think the first question that I have is really around the fact that, some people say that we have the hardware, the technology or infrastructure is readily available, but the issue seems to be the software, right? The mindset, resilience, as Christine, had pointed out earlier, and maybe BK and Christine, you could take this question, right? Around, how do we make people change, right? Behaviors and attitudes. So, an anonymous attendee has said that, she lives in a landed property, but she hardly sees, right, any composting use for organic waste, and doesn't seem to be a practice here within our country. How do we change that sort of mindset?
Thank you, Dr. Renard. I think most of the time people are waiting for regulation to come in. And they say to me, when the regulation, for example, in Europe right now, we have more and more regulation around waste management. French and European companies have to do reporting on how they deal with their waste, how they deal with their carbon emissions, and so on. So of course, this helps. I personally believe that right now on this topic, the pressure is increasing, coming from investors. I do advise lots of investors right now in France, and I see that when they invest in a company, they are expecting more and more of this company to deliver social and environmental impact. And when they look at the environmental impact, the first thing they're going to look at is the waste management. And how do you deal with your waste? Are you getting rid of it? Or are you using the 7R framework, which I like a lot? So pressure is coming from investors. Pressure more and more is coming from NGOs. When I joined Veolia, NGOs were coming to see us once a year to ask for the yearly financing in order for them to develop their own programs. When I left 8 years later, it was much more on how can we engage together? How can we design together new business model in order to protect the resource? And this is about, resourcing the world. This is the mission of Veolia, but how can we, on a particular field, with the NGO knowing the local communities and the local needs, and with a big private company like Veolia, how can we engage together in order to develop new solutions, in order to convince people that they should be recycling, that they should be making sure they don't stick all the waste in the same bin. Pressure is coming from cities. Cities definitely are willing to deal with this climate change issue that everybody explained this morning. And one of the main solution is to start with dealing with waste. So pressure coming from civil society as well and employees. In France right now, there is a huge issue for companies, and how can I attract young people to come and work within my company and stay more than 2 years? And more, what we call talents here, they look at the social and environmental impact of the company, and they do ask, what do you do and how do you deal with your waste? So yes, regulation helps. That is happening in Europe right now, and the fact that the European Commission has decided lots of regulation for sure is a big stick in order for companies to deliver more environmental impact, starting from waste management. But I do consider that the change will also come from pressure coming from investors, board members, civil society, NGOs. And this is the only way that we will find the right solution, by building this ecosystem with civil society, private sector, and of course, public authorities.
Seems like there's a lot on ecosystem transformation. That BK, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so let me just give some pointers as food for thought, okay? And there are several questions there that always refer to policies or government and what are they doing. I always say to whoever I work with that let's do something by ourselves first. and benefit ourselves before we think about the policies. Just because we separate our waste and the garbage truck comes in and mixes the waste and puts it back in the truck, doesn't mean we have to stop doing what we are doing. It means we have to realize that the minute waste leaves the border of our house, we have given up a right to deal with it. We've given it up. We have no control whether it goes to landfill, it gets mixed, it gets thrown on the road, in the river, nothing. But if we retain it within our borders and we manage it collectively as a community, we will be able to see very good outcomes, and we probably stop complaining, why isn't the government doing this and that? And then the government could take notice and say, wait a minute, this is a good thing. Let's propagate it amongst the critical mass of the population and make it into a policy. It can come from that bottom up as well. So I feel that we are the only creatures in the whole world that can take hold of our problems and deal with it. Unlike a plant or an animal, we have that ability. So we shouldn't stop. We shouldn't stop doing what we can do and continue just complaining about where waste is not collected, why isn't the government doing this, why is not there a policy, and all of that. I'm not saying that's false, it's true. But what I'm saying is we have the ability. Why don't we use it? Thank you.
Well, thanks, BK. Like, smart cities require smart people, right, to take action. I think there's a lot of truth in that. The next question actually comes from Nadia. She's saying that, as smart cities become smarter, would other cities actually get left behind? In Malaysia, she highlighted the disparity in waste collection between both residential and industrial areas, citing an example in Besut, Terengganu versus an industrial area in Shah Alam where she has worked at. Do you see that, May, or even Shamsul, like this disparity in waste collection?
Sorry, yeah, maybe I can take that. Thanks, Renard, for that. And Nadia, for your question. I will go back to the case study in Barcelona. So what BK mentioned is very true. Education and education of the people, and what Christine mentioned is the same. Education of the people is very important. So when I was in Barcelona, imagine me as a Malaysian going there, the shock that I have to segregate my waste into 5 different bins in the Airbnb that we stayed in. Okay, so the 5 different bins is one thing. We have to remember which one goes where, and then you have to segregate that. That's number one. Secondly is not just segregating. After you segregate, you don't bring it downstairs and let somebody pick it up. You actually bring it to the 5 colored bins that I show in my slide outside. So imagine for me, and I'm like, in Malaysia, you just chuck it in the bin and then that's it. You don't worry about that anymore. But in Barcelona, the government has made it into our problem, my problem, that although I segregate at source, I have to now bring it to the bins that are outside. And the bins are up to maybe 50 or some of them are even 100 meters apart. I have to bring that directly to the bins and that gets picked up. So the condo management and all that has got nothing to do with putting it back together or, mixing it up after that. Directly from me, I will go to the right bin. My green bin in the house goes into the green bin outside. And then the other thing about the routing and all that is what Barcelona have used is it is not efficient to every Monday to go through the same route to pick up the garbage when it's not full, and every Tuesday to industrial, every Wednesday. So imagine if they have to do that, the number of routes that these trucks have to go through. So what they did was it is actually segregating the types of waste and the trucks that goes to pick up the waste. And they do intelligent routing. So the question about industrial area and residential area, I think that is one of those technologies that we can probably adopt moving forward. Yeah? Looking at the different waste bins, and when the sensor for the bins are full, to then have the routing that goes up and pick it up. And the question on will some cities be left behind? Yes. Short answer, yes. There will be cities that will be left behind. There will be smart and smarter cities. There will be cities where the people are smart and the government are not smart. So there will be a whole lot of combination of all this. But I think like what BK said, you know, if all of us at our source, we work at this together, there is some level of awareness or some level of smartness that we can really provide. And then in combination with what Christine said, you know, if the government is on board with us in our area, I think we can get this done. Yeah.
Can I add to it?
Yes, please.
Okay. You make comparison between Besut and as well as Shah Alam, for example. When the contract is awarded to any concessionaire for collection, there's no different at all. I mean, the tasks, the TOR are similar. The only thing is that the habits of the consumer, some of us would find it is important for us to segregate at source. But some of us, when you segregate at source and you go out to your outside of your house, then you see the waste are being dumped by the roadside. So it makes you think, if that is allowed or it is not allowed, but then again, the neighbors are doing it. So why should you be segregating them at source at your own home? So this is why the educating the public is very important. We have to ignore whatever the neighbors are doing. We have to have our own principle. If we want to segregate, we segregate, and let them follow us when they really understood well what needs to be done. So it all depends on the consumer ourselves. Either you Besut or you are in Kuantan, you are in Penang, or you're Johor or KL. The contractor have the same task of segregating them. But yes, I do see sometimes when you have those waste, the contractor that comes to the collection, they'll just be dumping into the same truck. So what happened to it? So this is where the companies have to be told. We have to take photo, send it to the collector, because we have all those phone number at the truck. They say they are not doing their job. They are not actually working on the same sort of SOP as per other contractors. So the public need to take those action and tell whoever is in charge, hey, this is not the way how it's done. And we would love to do what as what May mentioned in Barcelona. We love that. But then again, we need to change the whole mindset. The habitual, the DNA needs to change. And what is most important, if we could have a generation that we change, our children, we teach them, but then we need to actually walk the talk to teach them as well. And as they grow old, they will be segregating the waste. Thank you.
Yeah, and Shamsul, I think this was exactly what one of our participants, Johan, had highlighted. Based on his observation, he is seeing, you know, some cleaners pouring contents of recycled bins all together in a general waste chuck. So his question is whether, you know, in Malaysia, like, are we going to be looking at enforcing recycling at apartment blocks? One, and the other question maybe for Shamsul as well is, you know, there's an observation here that certain countries like Canada are already banning manufacturing of plastics. So the question is this something that, you know, our government will consider or initiate so that consumers will start bringing their own containers at retail outlets?
Okay, that would be wonderful. But we just cannot ban, because this is talking about the economy of the nation. We need a balance. So perhaps the producer of those plastic bags, they would be introducing biodegradable as what you are looking at now. So those biodegradable, it has to be verified that they are degradable, not just some, well, maybe just having a print that says degradable and selling them at a higher price, a premium price. So more and more of products need to be introduced. We have biodegradable, we have even biodegradable straws nowadays. But bringing your own containers to Pasar Malam, for example, bringing your containers, your bags to buy groceries. That is very important. And if you are in KL, yes, there are quite a number of us that are doing that. And the ones that are not doing it, I think they are quite embarrassed if they don't bring those recycle bags. But what about the ones in the rural areas? We were talking about cities, that's right. But then again, the education needs to spread out to the rural areas as well. It is not that you are allowed to do in the cities, but you are not allowed to do in the cities, but you are allowed to do outside the cities. So the whole mindset needs to change and understand that it is politics and climate change is real because eventually it will get to us. If not now, then the next generation.
No, I think those are very, very good pointers. Chris has brought up two very interesting perspectives, like for our panelists to answer. His first observation is that he says a lot of advanced technologies that we have will be remotely useful if the government does not create policies that actually help promote the utilization of such technology. So he wanted to get a sense, from our panelists today, what can the general public actually do to stimulate, right, such legislative reforms?
If I may jump in here, Renard, taking from what I've just already said, I think public action or action of the society can encourage government and ease their task of the directions to take. But this must happen organically, grow, and the numbers must be sizable. Now, to talk practically, to talk about where people separate their waste and they're mixed again, I would say that what I would do is, number one, use the residents association, and this also addresses the question of compost. Somebody asked, I think it was Roshni who asked about compost, and one other person who talked about policies. So here we go. If we are able to form a residents association, if we are able to look at a sustainable waste management journey we want to take, then we start to separate our waste. And someone says it takes time. No, it doesn't. The manager of the kitchen, whether it's the maid or the lady of the house, just has to make sure that anything that goes into the bin in the kitchen can rot. So sardine tins and mineral bottle caps are not included. Those go into the other bin from the rest of the house, which is dry waste, paper, metal, glass, broken glass, etc. Now, this doesn't take time. It just takes one system to organize the house that these two streams of waste are going out. Now you've separated your waste and you complain that the waste is going to be commingled again. Don't do that. Instead of complaining, measure your waste. Now that you've separated it, you know how much of what you're collecting, aggregate that statistics with your community, and then plan a project around it. And here you are, step by step, you are taking action. In the interim, even if you have to throw the waste commingled and then throw the separated waste that gets commingled again, don't be disheartened. Progress your own efforts towards a zero waste society. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to bring Christine into the conversation. That there is something about, like accounting for greenwashing, right, in the drafting of our public policies, especially when we talk about waste management, climate change. There seems to be a lot of misinformation around this space. And I know just a couple of weeks ago, The Age in Malaysia has also done a publication on greenwashing. This seems to be picking up a lot of interest among our stakeholders. What are your thoughts? How do we combat this?
Thanks, Renard. I think the issue here is about measuring the impact. This is why when we talk resilient cities, circular economy and so on, I always advise to start with the first pilot. So for example, myself within Veolia, I chose the city of New Orleans. It was exactly 10 years after Katrina. I know the mayor was ready to engage with us and I started there. And on all that we are discussing this morning, I would advise starting with a concrete pilot somewhere where you feel you can engage with civil society, private sector, and public authorities to have a right ecosystem. And then you start deliver your own pilot. Then it is about measuring the impact. If you are able to show that by doing circular economy, instead of just dumping your waste wherever, you have a positive impact on climate change, you have a positive impact on biodiversity, and by the way, you also have a positive impact on social issue because you create more revenue, you preserve resources, then people will engage better with you. So to fight greenwashing, the solution is to make sure that in the whole ecosystem I described earlier on, I would advise having also a kind of academic partnership that will look at what you are delivering, and this academic or researcher or whatever you engage with will be writing a case study or will be saying, well, okay, I went there, I saw what the ecosystem delivered, and I measured the impact. Maybe as a start, the impact on biodiversity is not so clear, but I can see a strong impact on climate change. And here you go, and you start measuring the first year, the second year, the third year, you see how you progress. You see that sometimes the impact is not what you were expecting. But if you are not able to show that you are delivering impact, then it means that probably you sit in greenwashing, which is happening less and less, because as I said earlier on, now NGOs are much more aware of the topic. So when you say, when you claim, I don't do waste management anymore, I do circular economy, usually you have an NGO coming in and saying, okay, show me, I want to see. So show me a concrete pilot somewhere where I can see how it works and help you, make sure that you will do one other pilot and then another one. And also I want to see the results. I want to measure the impact.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christine. I think sort of unfortunately we're sort of running short on time. So, I thought it would be good for us to just do a quick wrap up, maybe just, one very quick takeaway from each of our panelists for our audience today. And maybe BK, we can start from you, since I know that you do have to leave.
Yeah, thank you very much for your consideration, Renard. Again, I want to stress that before, and I'm not saying don't do it, before we push for policies and we put government to task, we, citizens of the nation, of the world, because we want humanity to continue and not to die off due to climate crisis, need to take things into our hands. We need to organize it. We need to look intrinsically. We need to have an introverted view of what's going on inside us and what we need to do. What all can we do? And only after we've exhausted that, we need to look outside. Because by the time we exhaust it, I am very sure that government will take cognizance of what's going on and match and align to the citizens' needs. It will happen. It can happen. Just as how governments have been aligned to the climate needs and are committing internationally to their reduction. So it's a proven case. It's not maybe, it will happen. Let's take action first before we depend on anything or anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, BK. Maybe Christine next.
Well, I would share BK's optimism. I feel, the technologies are here, the innovation is here. As we saw, cities are willing to be more resilient, more inclusive, smarter. Private sector is willing to engage better with cities and is willing to deliver social and environmental impact. Civil society is becoming more and more mature, and something is happening is that everybody has access to information now. So you cannot pretend you didn't know there was an issue around waste management. Every single person on earth knows about this, the urgency of a topic. So by combining all these stakeholders' power and the fact that people are aware and are willing to take action, and I agree with you, BK, and that innovation is around the corner, I'm very optimistic about the fact that we will manage to deal with this issue.
Thanks, Christine. May, and then we'll end with Shamsul.
Thanks. My key takeaway is, are we willing to, in the first place, segregate our waste, like in Barcelona, up to 5? Are we willing to walk down 100 meters outside the house to dispose it in the right bin so that we don't have the resident management involved in putting it back together again? And the third one is, are we willing to also pay a waste tax? Because like in Barcelona, they do pay a minimum waste tax. And then at the same time, for each of the bags that they buy for the different types of waste, they also pay for that. Yeah. So if we are willing to do all that for the betterment of our planet, then I think we have a chance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yes, Shamsul.
Okay. It is not only relying on the industry for the extended producer responsibility, but also for the public, for the consumers, for the household to relook at whatever they do. Consume less so that you throw less. When you want to throw, you just keep them and collect them. And also we are encouraging more and more of the companies that do collection to come forward and let's work together. We have a handful, but we need more, because you look at the number of waste, 50,000 tons per day, it's a huge. So it's not only a single company that will be handling them. We need hundreds of companies, maybe thousands of companies at every community, every city, every municipalities. So let us work together and finding solution. If you have a technology that you can actually introduce to us, do so. If you find certain ways how to mitigate them, come to us, and we are ever ready. Even though we are not under the Ministry of KPKT, local government, but again, we love to have ideas, and we are opening up to everyone to share, and also your experiences, and let us do this together, because only togetherness and collectively we can actually address all the issues of waste. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very wonderful note first to end, like this panel session. On behalf of the CEO Action Network and Climate Governance Malaysia, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists today for joining us. And I'm sure there's going to be a third roundtable session, which Dr. Kala will explain in a little bit more. Over to you, Dr. Kala.
Thank you so much, Dr. Renard, and thank you so much to all our wonderful panelists. I think, ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that we've had such an informative and enlightening afternoon. I've learned so much just from organizing these webinars, and as Dr. Renard said, the last one will be a conversation with government. We will announce the date soon, and it will be uploaded onto our CGM website and the CEO Action Network website soon. So finally, please allow me to thank all the speakers again for their time, for brilliant panel discussion, and also Dr. Renard for moderating this session so effectively. And we won't have had the desired impact if we didn't have the right audience. Thank you very much for your active participation, and we hope to see you all at the final session with the government. So with that, goodbye, stay safe, and stay healthy. Bye-bye, everyone.